From LPM,
Louisville Public Media.
Support comes from Vision Zero. On foot or behind the wheel, safety is a shared responsibility. And Vision Zero Louisville believes 0 roadway fatalities is the only acceptable amount. Their mission is to create safe roads by design, engineering solutions, and education. More information at visionzerolouisville.org.
Welcome to On Track. I'm Aisha Jaffer. Spring is here, and with National Gardening Month underway, it's the perfect time to talk about the long-standing beloved trade of gardening. Whether you're a beginner or a master at this craft, we're going to be digging into some knowledge to start this gardening season off strong. Joining us today is Terry Gibson, a master gardener with the Kentucky Extension Master Gardener Program, part of the Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service at the University of Kentucky. With 20 years of experience, Terry has dedicated his expertise to educating the public on gardening, helping both beginners and seasoned growers cultivate thriving gardens. Terry, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
We're also joined by Jacob Stidham, Director of Horticulture and Facilities at Udell Botanical Gardens. With a degree in landscape horticulture and design from Purdue University and 20 years of experience in greenhouse operations, Jacob brings a wealth of knowledge in cultivating and maintaining diverse plant collections. Jacob, thanks for being on track.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So, for someone like me who wants to start a garden for the first time but isn't sure where to begin, what's the best first step? What essential tools or tips would you recommend for getting started? Starting with you, Terry.
Initially, plan a manageable garden in advance. That's very important. Close to a water source, hopefully at least 6.5 hours of direct sun, and have some idea how you're going to control diseases, weeds, and insects. Just make a basic plan like that, and it's great to keep records year after year after year of what you planted.
When you say manageable, what do you mean?
Well, a lot of people will go to garden centers and they may have a 4x6 plot and they'll pick out 15 tomatoes. And I tell that little tomato is me in about 6 months. So very manageable. Don't overdo it initially, because you can every gardener next year is bigger and better and bigger and better.
Jacob, anything to add?
Yeah, think about who you are and what you like to do, and build your garden around your life, because it becomes part of you. It's your hobby. It can become a lifestyle. So if it's for pollinator insects, you want to help out the environment, create more habitat, or do you just want a pot of cherry tomatoes on the front porch to plop one off when you head to work?
So what are some steps gardeners should take now, as we're looking at the beginning of the season, to prepare for their soil for a successful growing season?
In this area, in the Louisville area, we're blessed with a lot of clay soil, which isn't very good for many plants. So really getting out there and adding compost each year. You can use compost even as a mulch instead of your pine bark or your cedar mulch or your cypress mulch. Get that. You can layer on top. You can amend it, work it in with a pitchfork or a tiller or a shovel, and just really work on your soil. That's the canvas that you grow your plants on.
Is there anything that's changed about soil because of climate change, things like that?
Well, to piggyback.
Yeah, absolutely.
Piggyback on that. The soil is the anchor, period. And we need to think of our soil as a soil bank, our checking account. Every time we make a withdrawal, eventually we need to make a deposit, or otherwise we go bankrupt. The poor Irish back in 1840s or so, they found out the hard way because they were planting their potatoes year after year after year and not replenishing the soil, and they got, I believe, a late blight over a couple of years, and many people starved to death. So we need to replant. Every time we plant something, that something is extracting nutrients from the soil. So we need to replenish that soil. As Jacob said, compost, the browns and the greens, leaf mold and grass clippings and things like that is wonderful to replenish it with.
So, we were talking about Kentucky weather has been changing. It's a really cold winter, which, sorry, I think that was my fault as we were talking about bringing the ice from Minnesota. But how does Kentucky's climate now affect soil and what gardeners should be planting this season? Is it changing at all season to season?
I don't think the climate has really affected the soil. It's definitely affected the climate and the weather and the precipitation and things like that we get. But we're living in an urban environment now, whether you're in a new housing development on the outskirts of Louisville or surrounded by concrete. We have manipulated that soil from construction. So it's getting in there and rebuilding if it's been disturbed too much. And really some of the best soil you can get in the Louisville area are some of your old homes. Old Louisville, the contractors didn't come in during those times and take away all the topsoil and sell it off. But you get into a big housing development where they have came in and scraped off the topsoil. It's left you with nothing. It's almost a barren landscape, and you have to replenish it with the compost and organic matter to get going again.
Is the topsoil better because of age? I'm not so well versed in.
Yeah, I mean your soil, it takes a long time to build up. If you walked into a pristine environment, that soil profile is thousands of years old. So you just go through with a bulldozer once, and you erase all that.
Wow.
And when you have a basement dug, they get down and they dig up that subsoil, and then they put that back around your foundation. And if you come in and try to plant perennials or anything in it, they're just not happy.
So what are some of, I know this is a question that comes up a lot, what are some native Kentucky plants you would recommend for a home garden in that soil? How might they be beneficial actually when you're thinking about the local ecosystem as well?
Jacob, I'll let you. You're the man on the perennial.
We are so fortunate to live where we do because Kentucky has so many native plants. It's a very wide state from the eastern areas in the Appalachians to down by the Mississippi River. So when you talk about a native plant, just in our geopolitical line of Kentucky, they can vary a whole lot. But right through here, if you want to talk about pollinator plants, your coneflowers and your monardas, the bee balm, pycnanthemums. There's so many. A lot of people think of native plants as not really aesthetically pleasing or beautiful, but that's just not the case at all. We have a wonderful palette of native plants that can both serve for a beautiful garden and landscape in front of your home and create that habitat, that much needed habitat for the local ecosystem.
Does that make Kentucky unique?
Yes and no. I mean, there's great native plants all around the world.
Right.
But I'm partial to our plants here.
Of course.
Jacob mentioned pollinators. It's not native to Kentucky, but it's an herb called borage. It's an annual, but it reseeds itself, and it's a wonderful pollinator. And it has these beautiful blue or purple blooms, and it draws all kind of bees. And I found that's one of the prettiest and best. I mean, it goes every place. If you grow it here next 1 year, and all of a sudden it's over here, over there. So I grow it in pots, but it's not native, but it's a wonderful pollinator that I found here in this area.
Does that also bring in the monarchs? Because I know they have a big migration here through Kentucky.
I'm not sure the borage would bring in the
No. To really support your monarchs, you want to get out there and plant the milkweed. That's their host plant.
Yeah.
That's what they're laying the eggs on, and the larvae are feeding on.
So for those interested in growing their own food, what are some easy-to-grow vegetables and herbs that thrive in Kentucky's spring season?
Right now, peas. Sugar snap peas, your shelling peas. They will germinate in soil temperature approximately about 50 degrees. So next week, I grow my peas in pots. And also spinach, peas and spinach, and in your cole, C-O-L-E, cole crops, here in about 3 weeks, your cabbage, your kale, your collard greens, your broccoli. Middle of April would be perfect for that, but next week or so, maybe with temperatures in the 60s and 70s, is just a perfect time to plant your sugar snap peas. And here, the latter part of the month, even potatoes.
That sounds delicious.
Oh, it is. It is.
Well, okay. We're talking about this a little bit, but how can home gardeners incorporate sustainable practices like composting we talked about and water conservation into their routines for their gardens?
I tell people their goal. Okay, I've got 3 different plots. They're basically 10 by 12. And I found out about 15 years ago that I was space challenged. I didn't have enough space to grow some things. So I started growing in pots. And now I started with 3 pots. And now I have 35 pots, if you can imagine. So I grow a lot of things in pots. Ideally, your goal is to never, in your pots you have to water every day. Ideally, your goal is never have to water your garden. And if you incorporate the organic material year after year after year, those roots are moisture seeking. And if you have good soil, you shouldn't have to. I never ever water my traditional garden, but the pots have to do. But I have good soil, but I've worked at it over the last 20 years. It takes time.
So kind of just like natural environment will help water these plants on their own in this way.
Ideally, yes. But now in pots, you have to water every day, especially if it's on concrete, especially if it's in black pots, because it absorbs all that heat.
Terry, I have to ask you, where are you holding all 35 of these pots?
You need to ask my wife that, because we have a walkout ranch, and we come down the driveway and we pull in the garage. It takes her about 15 minutes to make some maneuvers to get in. I can get in about 12 or 13, but she gets in 13. But it's challenging. But every time I see something, I've got to plant it. So I get a pot out.
I love that.
Yeah.
Jacob, is there anything you want to add?
No, like he said, the more you can grow in the ground, the better. And one thing that can really help you out with water, and not really retention, but not having to use as much, is a little bit of afternoon shade. A lot of your vegetable crops are going to want full sun, but that really only means 6 to 8 hours of sun a day. So if you get morning sun, and then you can get them some afternoon shade from a tree or your house or a garage, that can really make those plants a lot happier, especially when you get into July and August.
If you can mulch your garden with the leaf mold, grass clippings, etc., it does 3 things. It conserves moisture, it smothers out the leaves, and over time it works itself right back into the garden. It's that cycle that takes place. So my traditional garden, I mulch heavily. In my pots, I mulch too, because I don't have to water as much, because that mulch retains the moisture within the soil.
So we gotta talk about pests, because I think this is something that comes up a lot. They're a common complaint from cabbage worms to box elder bugs and beyond. What pests do we need to worry about most here in Kentucky?
I guess the one that's getting ready to eat your first ripe tomato.
Yeah.
You're in a garden, you're growing a garden, so you're fighting nature all the time. Plants aren't supposed to be lined up in nice, pretty rows. And you're going to have insect pressure. There's a lot of different ways you can take care of it. At our garden at home and at UDEL, where I work at, we don't apply any pesticides to our plants outside. Even in the nursery at UDEL, our insect fighting program is beneficial insects. Now, in a greenhouse where we're growing our plants at UDEL, you can get really severe insect pressure really quickly. But outside, there's so many more natural predators. So the more habitat, the more plants, the more trees and shrubs that you can have in your garden, the more insects you're going to attract, which sounds bad, but there's so many insects out there that are beneficial, and they're eating the pests that are attacking your garden. And then a lot of them, like your cabbage loopers, the little green caterpillars that get on your broccolis and cabbage, picking them off. You could net them to keep the little butterfly from laying the eggs on it. We've really fought before the Colorado potato beetle. And they're hit and miss. Not every year is going to be the same. We've had years where we've had to go out and pick off hundreds of potato beetle larvae. The next year, nothing. So it's a give and take. But there's really no reason to go out there and spray your garden each week as a preventative for insects. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the average backyard gardener wants to spray anytime anything happens. It's not necessary, because if you have a small plot, check it daily. You can go out there. There's signs and symptoms. The sign doesn't look too good, and the symptom is, something's chewing on it. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't mean you have to spray. You can usually find whatever it is that's chewing on it by a little investigative work on it. But we spray too much, way too much. It's just not healthy.
So is the solution like picking them off one by one? I know you said netting, or is there like an organic way to get rid of the pests, or even can you buy other insects that eat those insects?
Yeah, absolutely. Your beneficial insects, and there's one distributor here in town, Auto Wild. You can buy, say in the greenhouse operations, aphids are one of your biggest pests. You can release little parasitic wasp, and don't get scared by that. They're little tiny. They just lay their eggs inside the aphids. It's a very vicious life cycle. Be a good Halloween special for you. And lacewing larvae, they just destroy aphids. There's the ladybugs, and then beneficial mites for different greenhouse pests. And you can do the same thing out in the garden. The praying mantis that you see, it's not eating your tomato. But it might be eating some of the insects that you don't want. So it's just creating a whole happy environment and habitat right outside your back door.
That's really cool.
The insecticides that people side means to kill. Mm-hmm. The insecticide people that use, they're killing the good guys too.
Right.
And many times the good guys far outweigh the bad guys.
Is there any sort of organic kind of insecticide?
Insecticidal soap.
There is. There's some definitely much easier on the environment than some of your other chemicals. Spinosad is one.
Neem oil. Insecticidal soaps.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
BT.
Bacillus.
Yeah, that's going to be for your cabbage loopers.
Yeah, chewing insects.
And is that a bacteria? It's a natural derived organism. Yeah. So it would fall into the
pyrethins. It's made from
chrysanthemums.
So there's organically friendly insecticides out there, but it's still aside, and it kills.
You're listening to On Track. We'll be back in a minute. Springtime is just around the corner, and it's not too soon to start planting your garden. Maybe you're wondering if your spot is sunny enough to support sweet peas, how to make your rosebuds abundant, or when to prune your poplar. Ask our master gardeners. Call or text 502-814-TALK. That's 502-814-8255 with your questions for On Track's Spring Gardening Show. You're back on track. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and we're talking about spring gardening and how to start your garden out strong this season. I'm with Terry Gibson, a master gardener with the Kentucky Extension Master Gardener Program, and Jacob Stidham, Director of Horticulture and Facilities at Udell Botanical Gardens. So we were talking about pests, but we also have to talk about critters. I hear about people growing some beautiful vegetables in their garden only to be met face to face with a squirrel or rabbit eating the fruits of their labor. How can this be prevented?
Move.
That's the best answer.
Really. Luckily, I have 2 outdoor cats. That keeps many of my pests away, but not the deer. I mean, if we knew that, we'd be making a lot of money. I mean, there's not any real good answer. There's all kind of gimmicks out there.
Yeah.
But the gimmicks, I found, they don't work.
Yeah. At Udell, we're fortunate enough to have an 8-foot deer fence that goes around our entire garden. So that keeps the deer out. But the rabbits and the groundhogs and the squirrels, they're always going to be a problem. Like Terry said, there's products at your local garden centers that will repel. But when it rains, you have to go back out there and put it again. I've told some people, they've almost thrown in the towel. And I said, just feed the deer. I said, go get you some whole corn and just feed the deer. And hopefully that'll keep it off of them. And then when you get into your herbaceous or your ornamental gardens, you can select a lot of plants that are deer resistant.
Yeah, lantanas are usually, It's very depressing. It is.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, it is, because you go out there and you see your whole top of your tomatoes, 6 or 7 just taken off. And
right.
You want to what can I do?
I like the idea of deflecting, though, giving them some other treat. Maybe that works. It's all an experiment, it sounds like.
It depends on how hungry they are.
Right. Well, also I hear, of course I'm a little new to town, but I heard about gardening, there's an after Derby rule. Can either of you speak to this?
It's the worst rule in the world. Derby could be either May 1 or May 7th. Mm-hmm. It's not so much the air temperature, which could be 75 or 80. We don't pay enough attention to the soil temperature. Mm-hmm. And the soil temperature needs to be, for vegetables, in the 60, 65 range. And sometimes Derby Day, it might be 75, but the soil temperature might be just 60 or so. So the Derby rule, to me, is the worst rule in the world.
Yeah, I mean, he hit the nail on the head there. Soil temperature, because if you put your bean seeds in the ground and it's not warm enough, they're going to rot.
Right.
There's that competition. If me and Terry were neighbors, I think we would probably try to push that envelope, and I would try to have the first ripe tomato. But it's patient. We have a long enough growing season in the Louisville area that you can still get yourself out there in mid-May, late May, and still have a great garden. And then going back, it was 2020, I believe. We had a hard freeze down 27, 28 degrees on May 8th or 9th. Yeah. And it was brutal.
Wow.
Usually we think in terms, and I'm seeing different maps on this, in terms of our last frost here locally, May 15th, but I'm seeing some maps now pushing it back May 1st. Our first frost in the fall is usually October the 15th or so, but we have these growing days, and it's approximately about 4 months from May 20th to September the 20th. We have the average temperature is 79 degrees, which is optimum, wonderful growing days. So if you put your tomatoes or peppers in, many times and the soil temperature is too cold, and 2 or 3 days later it gets down in the 30s, they'll sit there and pout. And many times they'll never recover. You're better off in the long run, not only your vegetables, but also your annuals, to wait. And they may survive, but they won't thrive. And us gardeners, we want things. I tell people, life is just too short. You want to have a garden that thrives every year.
Right, and you're both talking about soil temperature, which sounds very important. How do you know the soil temperature? How do you measure that?
Well, you can go to any website.
Okay.
The website that I go to shows me the soil temperature the last 3 or 4 days. It shows me the average soil temperature over the last 5 days, and the average 5 years, and the average soil temperature the last 10 years. University of Kentucky has a site, probably Purdue. I mean, what do you use?
I believe Kentucky Mesonet has some soil probes across the state. So depending on what area you live in, you can get a pretty nearby. And they do the different depths, at 2 inches, 4 inches, 6 inches. And it's pretty wild to see how quickly that warms up. And it's also wild to see how much of a temperature swing you have in those top 2 inches of the soil.
Wow.
And at UDEL, if you really wanted to see the effects of soil temperature, we put up a new greenhouse last spring and installed a heated floor system. So it's much more beneficial. It's sustainable compared to blowing heat above the plants and just trying to warm the air up. So we have a heated water system that runs underneath all the plants on the floor, and then that heat, it rises, so it keeps that soil temperature warm first, and then the air temperature warm second. And the root development and the speed at which a plant can take off when they have that good soil temperature is amazing.
That's really cool.
If we all could have that in our gardens.
Right. Well, are there any we're talking about this cool technology, are there any new trends in sustainable gardening techniques, such as hydroponics or vertical gardening, that Kentuckians should consider for their gardens?
Should consider now, there's this straw bale gardening that's going on. To me, that's the most confusing thing in the world, but there are a lot of people that are getting into that. It's just a different tool in your toolbox for gardening. More and more people, I've found more and more people are going to container gardening. Senior citizens that have been gardening all their life, they move into a senior citizen's home, they have a patio. They can grow something out there, an herb, tomato. Many of your immigrants have come here. They have a huge background, agricultural background. They don't have the land where they're living. Pots are available to them. So that's just one of the different means.
Do you have anything to add, Jacob?
Not so much that. I don't know who all's on Facebook. The social media is the wonderful world of social media. But there's a lot of what I call the feel-good messaging of the no-mow May. And, don't rake your leaves. But it's more of an instant gratification, an idea it's sound. Your thought process of wanting to help the environment is fantastic. But taking that a step further, so instead of just not mowing your grass for 1 month in May, let's go over here in the side of your yard and create permanent habitat. You plant perennials and trees and shrubs, and you just don't mow that all year. You give that back to nature, and kind of looking more in depth at creating that habitat in your yard instead of just getting on the Facebook and telling people, I didn't mow my grass in May.
Some pride there. Well, with just 1 minute left, if anyone has questions or wants to learn more about gardening, where can they go to learn more?
Well, we'd love to have them come out to Udell. We're less than 30 minutes from downtown Louisville, right off Exit 7 or Interstate 71 at Crestwood. And jump over to our website. It's udellgardens.org. We've got our workshops, cafe. You can come out, do some walking in our woodland trails, do some bird watching with our 2 lakes, and then coming out to our spring plant sales. And we're always a resource for the community. If you have questions, you can shoot us an email. All those addresses are on our website. If you just got a hankering to buy some plants right now, we've got our online plant store up that you can access through our website.
The local Jefferson County Extension Office, the master gardeners give classes throughout the spring. In fact, I've lined up for the next 4 weeks giving classes on container gardening and growing tomatoes and peppers. There's a whole series of classes given by the master gardeners throughout the spring for that.
Well, Terry, Jacob, thanks for being here on Track.
Great to be here.
It was fun.
Terry Gibson is a master gardener with the Kentucky Extension Master Gardener Program, part of the Kentucky Cooperative Extension Service at the University of Kentucky, and Jacob Stidham, Director of Horticulture and Facilities at Udell Botanical Gardens, joins us today. Thank you so much again for being here. This is so much fun. On Track is a production of Louisville Public Media. The On Track production team includes Michelle Tyreen Johnson, Jacob Munoz, Alex Biscardi, and Laura Ellis. If you're just tuning in and you want to hear the full show, you can find it now at LouisvilleOnTrack.org or in your favorite podcast app. And let's continue the conversation. Is there something you want to hear about? Something that matters to your Kentuckiana experience? Let us know by sending a text or giving us a call at 502-814-TALK or send an email to ontrack@lpm.org. I'm Aisha Jaffer, and remember, when roots take hold, petals unfold. Until next time, you're on track with Louisville Public Media.